Ever get that feeling? Like a little nudge saying something could be better, finally sticking to that workout routine, or
Right.
getting those work projects done, or just feeling like you're actually moving forward on the things that really matter?
Oh, totally. I think that desire for growth and improvement, it's kind of built into us, isn't it?
Yeah, it's like this constant drive. And that's what we're diving into today. We're going deep on the power of small habits, taking cues from James Clear's Atomic Habits. You've probably heard of it, maybe even skimmed through it.
It's a popular one for
Yeah,
sure.
and for good reason. But there's a lot to unpack there. So what we're doing today is pulling out the real gems, the practical stuff that shows you how those tiny, almost invisible changes you make every day, they can actually build up to some pretty amazing results.
The idea that you don't need these huge overhauls, it's more about mastering the fundamentals.
Exactly. It's about understanding the engine behind our actions, not just wishing for a different destination.
Right, like knowing how to steer the ship, not just dreaming about the island.
And to really illustrate that, let's look at James Clear's own story. This isn't some overnight success thing. Early on, he faced some pretty serious challenges. Broken nose, facial fractures, even a severe eye injury after a bad accident.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it was rough. For a while, even breathing was a struggle. He had seizures, was in a coma. The recovery was intense.
That's a powerful reminder of how fragile things can be
Yeah.
and the resilience it takes to come back from something like that.
Totally. And even after that, his path in baseball, it wasn't exactly smooth sailing. He barely played in high school, but he had this belief in getting better little by little. And that really took hold for him in college at Denison.
That's where the light bulb went off.
Yeah, he realized that the real secret wasn't these big dramatic shifts, but the surprising power of small, consistent habits. Those tiny actions repeated day after day, they were the key.
So it's those everyday challenges that often lead to these big aha moments.
See, it's like you're forced to focus on the process, on the small steps, because that's all you can handle.
Makes sense. You can't really plan for a grand slam when you're just trying to make contact with the ball.
And it wasn't just about his recovery. When he started writing online back in 2012, just putting out articles every Monday and Thursday, something interesting happened. Within months, he had 1,000 email subscribers. By the end of the following year, it jumped to over 30,000.
Really? That's impressive growth.
Right. It shows the power of consistent creation and sharing valuable insights. He wasn't even aiming to be some big expert, but the process itself led him there.
That's a great example of how those small efforts accumulate over time. The compound effect.
Exactly. And by 2018, his website was pulling in millions of visitors monthly, and nearly 500,000 people were subscribed to his newsletter. It kind of blew his own mind. And as he puts it, to write the book, he had to become the book. He had to live these principles to recover, to get stronger, to perform better, even to build his writing career and business. Small habits were unlocking his potential.
It gives his message this added layer of authenticity. It's not just theory, it's lived experience.
Definitely. Now, another great example he uses is British cycling. Before 2007, their performance on the world stage was, to put it mildly, not so good.
Yeah.
They were so bad that one top bike manufacturer actually refused to sell them bikes.
They didn't want their brand associated with them.
Exactly. They were worried it would hurt their image if the British team was seen using their gear. That's how far down they were.
Wow.
Then comes Dave Brailsford, the new performance director. And his whole philosophy was based on finding these tiny 1% improvements in everything related to cycling.
1%. It hardly seems worth the effort.
Right. But his thinking was, if you break down every single aspect, the rider's position, the bike's aerodynamics, even the pillows they slept on, and make each just a tiny bit better, those small gains would add up to something huge.
Okay, I'm starting to see where he's going with this. It's like the butterfly effect, right?
Yeah. Kind of, yeah. And the results, absolutely incredible. Over the next decade, British cyclists won 178 world championships, 66 Olympic and Paralympic gold medals, and 5 Tour de France victories. It's considered one of the most successful runs in cycling history.
From zero to hero in a decade. That's amazing.
And it all came down to those tiny, seemingly insignificant improvements. It really highlights the power of focusing on the process rather than just the outcome.
It's like those little things that create this snowball effect that builds momentum over time.
Exactly. And that's the big takeaway for anyone listening. Just like in cycling, those small changes in your daily habits, the ones that might seem completely unimportant at the moment, They actually determine the difference between where you are now and where you could be in the future. So it's far more important to look at the path you're on, your current trajectory, than to fixate on your current results. Because your daily choices, they're like votes for the kind of person you want to become.
Like you're building your identity one small habit at a time.
All right, so let's dig into how these small habits actually work. Clear talks about the compounding effect. It's like compound interest, but for your life.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Tell me more.
So imagine you make a small improvement and you do it consistently. Over time, it starts to accumulate. And then those gains start building on each other.
Like a snowball rolling downhill, it just gets bigger and bigger.
Exactly. Think about productivity. If you get just one extra small task done each day, it might not seem like much. But over a whole career, that adds up to a massive difference in your output and impact.
Wow, I never thought about it like that.
Or consider knowledge. Each new idea you learn, each book you read, it doesn't just stand alone. It builds on everything you already know, creating a richer, more interconnected understanding.
It's like building a mental library, and each new book adds to the value of the whole collection.
And it goes beyond individual achievements, too. Relationships compound as well. The more you offer help to others, the more they tend to reciprocate. Just being a bit more considerate or attentive in each interaction, it can build this amazing network of strong connections over time.
So those small acts of kindness, they create a ripple effect.
Exactly. But here's where it gets even more interesting. Clear introduces this concept of the plateau of latent potential and the valley of disappointment. It's this idea that progress isn't always a smooth upward curve. Especially in the early stages of building a new habit, you might feel like you're not getting anywhere. You make these small changes, but you don't see any tangible results.
Like you're putting in the work, but nothing's happening.
And that can be really discouraging. It's like trying to heat an ice cube that's at 25 degrees. You keep adding heat, but it still looks exactly like an ice cube.
All that effort for nothing.
It feels that way, right? But it's not. All that energy, it's being stored. All the action happens at 32 degrees. That's when the ice finally melts.
I see. So the work you're doing, even if it doesn't show immediate results, it's laying the foundation.
Exactly. And then when you do finally break through that plateau, to everyone else, it looks like this overnight success. But you know it's the work you put in when it felt like nothing was happening that made that jump possible.
It's like those hidden roots under the ground suddenly bursting forth.
Now, here's another interesting point Clear makes. He challenges this traditional focus on setting goals. He says, forget about goals, focus on systems instead.
Really? That's a bold statement.
It is, right. It goes against a lot of conventional wisdom. We're always told to set goals, to be specific and measurable and all that.
Goal setting is like the cornerstone of achievement.
And for years, that's how Clear approached his own habits, too. But he started to realize that his results had very little to do with the goals themselves and almost everything to do with the systems he was following.
The system, so like the processes behind the goals.
Exactly. Achieving a goal is just a momentary change. You might hit a target weight or a revenue number, but that doesn't guarantee long-term improvement.
It's like winning a game, but not really improving your overall skill.
He argues that to actually improve for good, you need to solve problems at the systems level, fix the inputs, and the outputs take care of themselves.
So it's about addressing the root cause, not just the symptoms.
Exactly. If you focus on building a system for healthy eating, you're much more likely to maintain a healthy weight than if you just try to hit a specific number on the scale. And there are other problems with being too goal-focused. Goals can restrict your happiness. You're constantly in this not yet mindset, thinking you'll only be happy when you achieve the goal.
Always chasing that future state of happiness.
And then there's the yo-yo effect. Think about those runners who train like crazy for a marathon, but as soon as it's over, they stop running. Their goal was the only thing motivating them.
Ah, so they haven't really built a sustainable habit.
Exactly. So Clear advocates for falling in love with the process, finding satisfaction in the system itself.
That makes sense. It's about enjoying the journey, not just the destination.
Right. Which brings us to the idea of identity-based habits. Clear explains there are 3 levels of change. Outcomes, what you get, processes, what you do, and identity, what you believe.
So it's about going deeper than just the surface level.
Exactly. Most people start by focusing on the outcome, but the more powerful approach is to build identity-based habits. You start by focusing on who you want to become.
So it's not just about wanting to lose weight. It's about seeing yourself as a healthy person.
And the key here is that behavior that goes against your self-identity just won't last. You might want more money, But if you identify as someone who consumes rather than creates, you'll keep getting pulled towards spending.
It's like those internal beliefs, they create a sort of gravitational pull.
He shares a great story about this. Brian Clark, an entrepreneur, he'd been a lifelong nail biter. He managed to stop for a while, but then he did something interesting. He asked his wife to schedule him a manicure.
A manicure. That's an interesting approach.
It is, and it worked because it addressed his self-image. By getting a manicure, he was acting like someone who takes care of their nails, someone who doesn't bite them.
It was a symbolic act that reinforced his desired identity.
Exactly. And that's the ultimate form of intrinsic motivation when a habit becomes part of who you are. You're not trying to be that person anymore. You are that person.
It's like it becomes ingrained in your sense of self.
And the more pride you take in a particular aspect of your identity, the more motivated you'll be to maintain the habits associated with it. If you're proud of being a musician, you'll naturally want to keep practicing.
It becomes less about willpower and more about alignment with your values.
Now, it's important to remember that your identity isn't fixed. Progress requires unlearning, continuously editing your beliefs, and expanding who you are. You can't get too attached to one version of yourself.
You need to be adaptable and open to change.
Right. So how do you actually shift your identity? Clear says it comes down to your habits. Every action you take is like a vote for a particular identity. Every time you write a page, you're a writer. Every time you do a workout, you're an athlete.
So it's about consistently casting votes for the person you want to be.
All right, so we've talked about the power of small habits, focusing on systems, and building an identity around the habits you want. Now, Clear provides a really practical framework for actually building good habits and breaking bad ones. The 4 laws of behavior change.
Okay, let's get into the nitty-gritty.
So these laws revolve around the 4 parts of a habit loop: cue, craving, response, and reward. The first law is make it obvious, and it's all about the cue.
The cue is like the trigger that starts the habit.
Right. Our brains are constantly scanning our environment for cues that a reward might be coming. And over time, these cues become so ingrained that our habits become mostly unconscious.
They have it on autopilot.
Exactly. So awareness is the first step to changing anything. Clear talks about the pointing and calling technique, which is used in some subway systems to make actions more conscious.
Interesting. So it's about bringing those unconscious habits into your awareness.
And he also mentions the habits scorecard, which is a simple exercise to help you identify your current habits.
So you can start to understand your own patterns.
Then, to make good habits obvious, Clear introduces implementation intentions, that I will behavior at time and location formula.
Okay, so you're being really specific about when and where you'll do the habit.
And then there's habit stacking, which is the idea of after current habit, I will new habit. It's about using existing routines to build new ones.
Like piggybacking on something you already do automatically.
Exactly. He uses the example of Diderot's robe and the Diderot effect to show how one new purchase can trigger a cascade of related changes.
The Diderot effect. I haven't heard of that one.
So the Diderot effect is this tendency for one new acquisition to lead to a desire for a whole set of complementary items. And he stresses that for habit stacking to work, you need those specific and immediately actionable cues.
It's not enough to just say, I'll exercise after work.
Right. You need to be more precise, like after I close my laptop at 5 p.m., I will put on my running shoes.
Got it. The clearer the trigger, the better.
And finally, for making it obvious, Clear talks about designing your environment. He shares the story about a study in a hospital cafeteria where they simply placed water in more visible locations, and it significantly increased water consumption.
So by making the healthy choice the easy choice, people were more likely to go for it.
Exactly. He calls it choice architecture. It's about making the desired actions the obvious ones.
I like that. So it's about setting yourself up for success by making the good choices the path of least resistance.
All right, moving on to the second law. Make it attractive. This one's all about the craving.
The craving, so like the desire to do the habit?
Well, not exactly. Clear explains that cravings are the motivational force behind every habit, but we don't crave the habit itself. We crave the change in state it delivers.
Oh, I see. It's the reward we're really after.
Exactly. You don't crave smoking a cigarette. You crave the feeling of relief or relaxation it provides.
It's the feeling, not the action itself.
And our environment plays a huge role in shaping our cravings. Clears mentions this study on heroin addiction during the Vietnam War that showed how a radical change in environment could eliminate even strong cravings.
So our surroundings can influence our desires.
Definitely. He also talks about how our brains are still wired to crave things like salt, sugar, and fat, even if they're not so good for us in the modern world. And he discusses the role of dopamine, which is the neurotransmitter associated with craving and desire.
Dopamine is like the brain's reward chemical.
So how do you make good habits more attractive? Clear introduces temptation bundling, which is linking an action you want to do with an action you need to do.
Oh, like rewarding yourself for doing something you might not enjoy.
Exactly. He uses the example of someone who connected his exercise bike to Netflix so he could only watch his favorite shows while working out.
That's clever.
And he talks about the power of social influence. We tend to imitate the habits of those around us, especially those we admire or want to be like.
We're social creatures, so it makes sense that our environment and the people in it would influence our habits.
And finally, Clear talks about reframing habits to make them more appealing. It's about focusing on the benefits rather than the perceived drawbacks. Like, instead of thinking, I have to go to the gym, you could reframe it as, I get to move my body and feel energized.
So it's about shifting your perspective.
The third law is make it easy, and this is all about the response, actually doing the habit.
Okay, so now we're talking about execution.
Exactly. Claire points out the difference between being in motion planning and strategizing and taking action.
So it's about actually doing the thing, not just thinking about doing it.
He uses this great anecdote about a photography class where the students who just focused on taking a ton of photos ended up producing much better work than the students who were obsessed with perfection but didn't actually shoot much.
Quality over quantity, huh?
He emphasizes that mastering a habit starts with repetition, not perfection. Just get your reps in. And Clear introduces the law of least effort, which basically says that we naturally gravitate towards things that are easy to do.
That makes sense. We're wired to conserve energy.
So to make good habits easy, Clear suggests reducing friction. This could be optimizing your environment, like organizing things in a way that makes it easier to make healthy choices. Or it could be about priming your environment for desired behaviors, like laying out your workout clothes the night before.
So you're making it as easy as possible to do the right thing.
Exactly, and he introduces the 2-minute rule, which is this idea that when you're starting a new habit, it should take less than 2 minutes to do. The point isn't to only do it for 2 minutes, but to master the habit of showing up.
So you're making the initial step as easy as possible.
The fourth and final law is make it satisfying. This is all about the reward.
Okay, so this is where we get the payoff.
Exactly. Clear explains that satisfying experiences make us more likely to repeat a behavior. Our brains prioritize immediate rewards over delayed ones.
Instant gratification.
He calls it the cardinal rule of behavior change. What is immediately rewarded is repeated. What is immediately punished is avoided.
Makes sense. We're wired for that immediate feedback loop.
So he suggests finding ways to make good habits immediately rewarding, even in small ways. This could be something as simple as giving yourself a high five after a workout or enjoying a healthy snack you really like.
So you're associating the habit with a positive feeling.
Exactly. And he introduces habit tracking, which is a way to make your progress visible and satisfying. This could be something as simple as marking an X on a calendar every day you stick to your habit.
I like that. It's a visual reminder of your progress.
And Clear talks about the importance of accountability partners and habit contracts. These are ways to add immediate consequences to not following through on your habits.
So you're creating external motivation.
Now, we've covered the core of Clear's framework. There are some more advanced tactics he gets into in the final part of the book, things like the importance of staying motivated and finding the right level of challenge.
This is about fine-tuning your approach once you have the basics down.
Exactly. But the 4 laws really are the foundation for building lasting habits.
They give you a solid structure to work with.
So here's the big takeaway. Small habits, done consistently, lead to big change. Focus on building systems and build those habits around the identity you want to create. And remember the 4 laws. Make it obvious, make it attractive, make it easy, and make it satisfying.
Those are powerful tools for anyone looking to make positive changes in their life.
So here's something to think about. What's one small habit you can implement immediately based on what we've talked about? Maybe it's setting out your workout clothes tonight or picking a specific time to work on that project you've been putting off. And really consider how focusing on who you want to be, your identity, can be the driving force behind making those changes last. We highly recommend diving deeper into atomic habits and taking some time to reflect on your own habits and the systems that are shaping your life. It all starts with one small step.